Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sitting right here in Times Square in the heart of America's capitalism and economic center. As you can see, it's packed, full of lights, full of action. But what is happening here in this economy? I've spent the last 3 weeks traveling around this country to try and understand it. It's very scary when one considers. I've spoken from everyone, from taxi drivers to hotel, to people, travel agents, to property people. And generally people are very nervous as to where they are. They're very concerned about the future, and most importantly, they think that they've probably reached the bottom, but they're not sure where to from here. The scary thing is the unemployment. The unemployment currently sits at 10%. However, the government has manipulated the figures, and when one looks at it and compares apples with apples, during the Great Depression, unemployment was 25%. Currently it sits, using the same formulas, at 24.8%. It's basically exactly the same as the Great Depression. The stock market as well has copied exactly what happened during the Great Depression, and it's very worrying as to what is coming in the future. And then one looks at property, and the big problem with property here is supply and demand. They believe that, effectively, if they were to use the current demand and the current number of properties that are being bought, there's over 10 months worth of supply in this country until all the stock is used up. The problem is that for many years it was so easy to get a mortgage. I asked someone how would one get a mortgage, and he said all you needed to do was have a pulse. It's absolutely crazy how they were lending money in this country. In California, for example, 1 out of 10 people are behind on their payments. When one looks across the market, you need to realize that the American market is huge and it's very regionalized. Here in New York, it hasn't been as badly affected, but in places like Las Vegas, it's down by 70%. A $320,000 home is now selling for less than $100,000. In Rand terms, that's over a 2 million Rand property is now selling for about 600,000. The interesting thing though, and what is scary, is whether these properties will rent. It's very easy to get good value and good discounts, but is there demand? I've looked and there's plenty of to-let signs. And when one looks at it, and I've been on a number of different business courses here and I've spoken to many different people, the challenge we've got is the reset mortgages. What basically happened in September 2008 is that $36 billion worth of mortgages reset, which basically means that people that had fixed mortgages were then effectively had to get new mortgages, and that is where the subprime crisis began. The worrying thing is whether we're in a W curve, and what I mean by that is that things definitely start to seem improving. In Florida, for example, they're up 70% in January in terms of house purchases. The worrying thing though is that in 2011 the resets are due to hit another 40 billion per month, and this is what many people are very concerned with regards to residential property. The other major thing to highlight is the commercial property market. When one considers what's happening in the commercial property market, one is very concerned because they also are going to reset starting from about summer of this year. Now, when one considers that many of these commercial mortgages are not going to be remortgaged, they believe many people are going to lose a lot of money, and most importantly, the banks are going to be directly affected. So what one needs to understand with this market is that it is a huge market. There certainly are fantastic opportunities here, but one has to be very careful and choose one's partners. They believe at the moment 21% of Americans are underwater when it comes to their mortgage payments, and they believe by the summer of this year it could be as high as 50%. Ladies and gentlemen, this country is a bit shell-shocked. They don't quite know what to do. Everyone is concerned. There's a lot of problems when it comes to whether they believe the government is doing it right. And I showed you that picture. They're also very concerned about the debt, which is now $12 trillion. This is certainly a market which needs further investigation, but it's fascinating to understand because this is where the property market problems began. And where is it going to lead to? As I sit here in Times Square, I believe there's many things that one needs to look at. But most importantly in America, it was the easy access to finance and the oversupply of properties which caused the problems. And this is very different from other countries. But because of those problems, it's tightened up the world credit. And that is what is affecting us all globally. So, from this, a very cold morning here in Times Square, I bid you farewell, and I look forward to bringing you my report. Please go to our website, www.ipsinvest.com, where I will write up the full report with all the facts and figures of what I've found here in this American market.